These days are visiting my parents in Italy, and I'm looking around for games that I wouldn't find easily in the US, games that haven't been released there or simply that I haven't heard of while I was there, games designed by Italians or leased by Europeans, and possibly also games that I can play with my daughters. One such game that I found here met all of the above requirements is Leonardo. I never heard of it before. I simply saw it on the shelf of a game store here, and as then I discovered, looking at the back of the box, there's a game about young Leonardo and also young Mona Lisa. She's a character too, and Leonardo's cat is not on the cover, but he's in the game. And the three characters go around the board that you see here, and they collect items to build inventions. They collect resources to build inventions. In this game, the three characters are not owned by any player specifically. All players can control any of the characters in different turns. And well, let me show you how the game works actually. Let me show you the core engine, the core idea, which revolves around this deck of cards. Where is the cat? Here it is. So each player has a set of cards, one card representing each of the character, and then cards representing numbers from 1 to 3. At the beginning of a turn, all players simultaneously select a card representing a character, a card that they would want to move, and a card indicating the number of spaces that they would like the character to move clockwise. That's the only direction in which characters move. Players do that simultaneously, then they all reveal their selections, and starting with the first player, who is identified by a specific token, which is this one. Each player then moves their characters as programmed. So, for example, that was my selection. I move the character there. If you end in an area of the board that is empty, doesn't have a card there, then your turn is over. If you end in an area with a resource, such as this one, the rope, you simply collect it and put it in front of you in your play area. If you stop in an area with an invention, you can take the invention if you can produce the correct set of resources, of materials. In this case, I would need a rope and 2 wood. If you collect the design, the invention, good for you, because this is the point of the game. That is to collect as many of these inventions as possible. Once all players took their turn, the empty slots are refilled with inventions and or resources, and players continue like this until one of the 2 decks, materials or inventions, is exhausted. At the point the player that scored the most points, the points are printed on the invention cards, is the winner of the game. Couple of other wrinkles. There are some of these cards here that are not materials. They represent special effects, special cards. For example, Mona Lisa here allows you to take a card from the table after everybody took their turn. The lady there allows you to take a material card, not a design card, not an invention card from another player. There is Leonardo's portrait that can be used as any one material. There's this card here, this sort of thing. As you can see, everything looks very cartoonish. The game to me looks like it is based not on Leonardo, but it is based on a cartoon inspired by Leonardo that, as far as I know, only the game designers saw. It feels like it's from a franchise, but I don't know this franchise. Is there such a cartoon that was never released in the US and I never heard of? Probably not, but it feels like that. Let's start my general assessment with the production, which is to me lacking. There are problems in the production. Well, it's lacking in some respects and doing too much in some other respects. The board looks great at first sight, but frankly, when you look at the empty area that where the materials go on, it looks just too much too similar to the area with the materials on, especially the material is cloth. So it's just not all that easy between turns to check around and see if a space has a material or not. Yes, you can do it, it's not that big of a deal, but it's simply something that gets in the way of enjoying the design without any problem. Also, the back and the front of the material cards, again, they just look very similar to one another. I don't know why they couldn't differentiate them any better. But however, the thing that bothers me the most in the production is that almost half of the components, probably half of the components in the game are perfectly useless. And I'm referring to these ones that I haven't even showed to you, because didn't I just mention they're completely useless? They are basically stand-up, representing the same inventions that are represented by the cards. So you have these stand-ups. Oh, and by the way, they only come with three bases, and since there are only three inventions out at any given time, the game says, well, you take three of these bases, which are super tight, and if you place them there, they easily ruin the bases of the stand-up. So the game says, you know, take the three of them, the three of these toy thingies here, these stand-up things, the ones representing the inventions that are available right now, and put it in the middle of the board, which by the way would be pretty annoying, because then as you're moving around you're gonna bump them. So you're gonna put them in truth on a side. And then they say, and when you take an invention, we'll take the card and take the corresponding thing, remove it from the bases, and put both the card and the thing in your play area. However, you only score it once, you only score the card. So what the heck is the use for these things? Absolutely nothing. They're annoying to put on these tight bases and to remove when you take one. So as you can imagine, we just don't use them. They're completely useless, but clearly when I bought the game, I paid for them. Other than this, mechanically the game is not bad. It's not a masterpiece, so maybe there are reasons why this game was never released in the US, was never picked up by any American company for distribution or for making a specifically American version, as far as I know. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's far from a masterpiece, but it works well with my daughters. Actually, the 6-year-old quite like it. At the core, this is a bluffing game, and it is a game about reading your opponents. Yes, at first sight, it is a game about collecting resources and programming movement, and that is good too, because my daughters get to learn about programming movement, which is a mechanic they find very hard to grasp, as even myself as an adult. This is done easily. I can understand it, my 6-year-old can understand it, my 4-year-old can understand it. It's hard for them to understand, of course, is the bluffing, taking into account everybody's thinking element, because if everybody moves the same character, everybody programs movement for the same character, then after the first player went, for everybody else is kind of random. So if you're the first player, you know that you'll get to move the character that you want, and that's great. So from time to time you're in complete control. And maybe the characters or none of the characters is close to a resource that you want. There is that possibility. When you're not the first player, then you have to take into account what the players will be doing, what is it that they're trying to achieve, and then you base your decisions on that. If you think they'll activate a character, then you can activate another character. If the character goes somewhere that is useful to you, you can get a sense of like, well, if they're going to activate that character, which is very far from the resource that I want, maybe at least I can play the character as another resource, as another movement card that will allow me, after the card has been moved once, to get closer to where I want to be. So there are still ways of doing that. Even when you're not the first player, it doesn't mean that your only option is to move a character that the other players will not move, in your opinion. There's still the possibility that you will try to build on their movement by increasing it and adding movement, so that maybe you don't go where you need to be this turn, but you get some other advantages that way, positional advantages. So for my daughters, that element is very hard, but they'll get there, and that is good. The way they play right now is, again, with program movement and resource collection. and just a second, collection of different sets of elements, and that is not a bad thing. It's simply that when I play with them, then I try not to be too brutal. I try not to read too much into what they're doing, which is of course pretty obvious because they tell me, even though I tell them not that there's a bluffing element, they still tell me what they want to do. So I simply do not exploit that information. So an adult playing with young kids under 8 possibly will have to have that psychological adjustment. The game is recommended by the age of 8, by the way. It is just that it works if you want in a simplified version, not from the rules, but for not a simplification about the rules, but simplification about the mindset. In a simplified version, it can be played by younger kids by the age of 4 or 6, which are the ages of my daughters right now. So you can play it with kids that are much younger than the age indicated on the box. The full experience, which is collecting resources, building stuff, and reading your opponents, well, that is for kids a little older. But it is not a bad game. It is not an excellent, superb game, but a game for families, a game for kids, probably a game that is a little too easy, a little too linear for hardcore gamers, but it is a game that has some functions for families and for children. It is a game that could have been produced much better, but mechanically, design-wise, it is not a super mega masterpiece, but it is not a bad game either.